Thank you, General Secretary. Vera, Ara, agus a Green Usla. Is son or dumser son, bod edicus agus Elena Erin, falcha a curroiv galair, dun cade cogal vlintul, Jacoman garamedicus in Erin. Ara is a carja, falcha creole rove galair gagalav, wanagi tanav agus tarba, asan gogal. Mayor, Minister O'Sullivan, delegates, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is a singular honour for me to give my first presidential address to the annual conference of Education and Training Boards Ireland and to welcome you to the City of the Tribes. The delegates here today represent the board membership and staffs of our 16-member ETBs. For all of you, this is also a unique and historic occasion, as this is the first annual conference of ETBI since the adoption of our new constitution last November. I warmly welcome our distinguished guests and thank you for being with us today. In 2008, the ETBI Conference was held in the Clayton Hotel in this city. As chairperson of County Galway VC, I had the privilege of welcoming the delegates on that occasion. I recently came across the few notes I used on that occasion. I stated in my words of welcome the following, and it's not often I get to quote myself. Since our last conference, the economic landscape of Ireland has changed considerably. Each day brings breaking news of job losses, stock market turmoil, cutbacks, rising unemployment and bank closures. And to inject a bit of humour into my welcoming remarks, I stated that I didn't think that Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac or the Lehman Brothers would be attending our conference on that occasion. They won't be attending on this occasion either. These lending institutions spectacularly folded on the 6th and 15th of September 2008 respectively. The impact of the downturn on the lives of Irish people is well documented. The subsequent cutbacks in the education sector, coupled with the moratorium on recruitments in the public sector, has been damaging for all learners. Minister, I must acknowledge that you and your government have rescued our economy, fixed the public finances, created new jobs, and the economy is now growing, and the recovery is well underway. If ETBs are to lead and transform education and training, the recovery must be accompanied by the restoration of services lost and the rolling back of the cutbacks in a systematic, orderly manner. At the ACCS conference earlier this year, your Secretary-General, Mr. Sean O'Fowlou, stated that you as Minister would be willing to hear from partners on spending priorities for consideration as part of future budgets. In this context, Minister, I strongly recommend that you give favourable consideration to the ETBI pre-budget submission, which was recently copied to you. In it, we set out in a reasonable and measured way a number of priorities that should be addressed over a period of time, and I will refer to some of these during the course of my address. You have had a busy 14 months since taking over the education portfolio, and we applaud your tenacity and political skills in moving forward such major undertakings as the reform of junior cycle education and the implementation of the reform of Irish apprenticeships. And maybe I might reference the junior cycle later. You can be assured that the ETBs will be to the fore in ensuring the success of these two great ventures in our second-level schools and in further education and training provision. Delegates, the legislative reforms of 2013 were never going to be a silver bullet solution. The changes necessitated by the new legislative architecture were complex. They involved the creation of new governance structures, new integrated IT and financial management systems, new integrated payroll systems, new IR systems and processes, new integrated further education and training services, new ETB-wide quality assurance systems, new management structures, and so on. They also involve very significant technical planning. Each of these changes has involved complex and protracted negotiations between ETBI, the DES, SOLAS, and in many cases the relevant unions, and many of these are still ongoing. While ETBs have faced huge challenges and some inevitable tensions over the last 2 years, we have made some real progress, working in collaboration with your department, Minister, and with Solace. In this regard, I want to acknowledge particularly the work of the DES-managed ETB Solace project, the ETB Solace Project Management Office. And I want to also acknowledge the way ETBs generally are working collaboratively with ETBI Fora and other working groups to identify and share best practice in every aspect of their work. Just a few of the significant achievements that we have achieved together: the establishment of new ETB boards with a more widely based membership composition, the establishment of new boards of management in all ETB schools and colleges. In this regard, a new ETBI handbook work group has developed a set of comprehensive guidelines and training modules for board of management members, and the trainings of these school and college board members is commencing. And I do believe, Minister, that will have a significant impact in the manner in which we are managing our schools. The successful transfer of the former FOSS training centres to ETBs, with arrangements underway for the transfer of staff from the training centres to the 5 ETBs that do not have training centres, and the establishment of the ETBI QQI Forum, and the appointment of QA professional to ETBI to facilitate the development of a QA framework for all ETB and FET provision. I would now like to turn to a number of concerns and issues that ETBI believes need to be addressed if ETBs are to fulfil their mandate. If our schools and the FET sector are to exploit their potential to the maximum, to enhance individual fulfilment, social cohesion, and economic prosperity. These matters require attention and resolution, and it's in all our interest to make sure that the resolution is achieved. Minister, in your address to us last November, you lauded the extraordinary level of commitment from our ETBs. Commitment there is surely, but after more than 5 years of resource attrition and cutbacks, ETBs have become significantly under-resourced, particularly at senior management level, and are struggling to maintain their current level of services. ETBs have a much wider range of functions and responsibilities than had former VECs, but they cannot deliver on these to their full potential without an appropriate senior management team. In this context, we welcome your department's recent initiative regarding senior management resources as a first step in restoring capacity in ETBs to deliver on their functions and your government's objectives. The resourcing of ETBs is a very serious concern which has been highlighted many times over the years to your department by ETBI and individual ETBs. We have been in negotiation with your officials. We have made some real progress in respect of senior management posts, and this is most welcome. We are trying to resolve the staffing issue for the medium term. We ask you to make it a matter of urgency that all ETBs are appropriately resourced and relieved of the constraints of the moratorium on employment. ETBs have identified critical vacancies and submitted these to your department, and the department has this week started the process of providing approval for filling some of these. And I think I might be correct in saying the number 16 might be accurate. ETBI and the department must continue this process so that legally, financially and operationally, our member ETBs will have the capacity to function effectively. ETBs are your department's delivery agencies for education and training. Minister, please make sure they are properly resourced to do so. Strategies, plans and policies, while welcome and praiseworthy, will fail at implementation stage if resources at delivery stage are inadequate and insufficient to deliver practically on the promise of a policy. While ETBI is engaged with your department on this vital matter, I also need to emphasise the urgency of maintaining ETBs on a financial sound footing. The yearly general and post-primary other non-pay funding allocation to ETBs must adequately address their annual expenditure on services and programmes. ETBs have growing student numbers, more schools and more associated services, yet there is an expectation that they must be met from an allocation that has clearly become inadequate. We are asking you now to restore the ONP funding allocation to ETBs to pre-2012 levels at a minimum, but preferably to a level greater than that to reflect significantly increased expenditure arising from the significant expansion of roles and functions arising from their statutory responsibilities and from significantly changed demographics within their catchment areas. This is a significant matter needing a firm and resolute response from your department, as the current situation is clearly unsustainable. Our second-level school leaders are stretched to the limit. Just as we embark on implementing the new junior cycle framework, new models for the placement of trainee teachers in schools, and new models for the induction and probation of newly qualified teachers, if principals and deputy principals are to lead these reforms, they must be provided with the middle management structures and supports essential to doing so. ETBI recognises the budgetary constraints, Minister, but without adequate structures and supports, our schools will not be able to deliver sustainable reform. It is imperative that the current discussions with your department results in the establishment of a new and appropriate middle management structure for second-level schools that facilitates day-to-day management, leadership of staff and students, leadership of educational reform, especially leadership of teaching and learning. Identification and preparation of future school leaders is also desirable. It is absolutely imperative that a real and substantial start be made to this for the beginning of the school year 2016-17. The arguments for significantly increasing the level of resource allocated to guidance and counsel in second-level schools are well made already. I simply want to say that getting the career choices and mental health of young people right is a manifest investment in the future health of our young people and the economic prosperity of Ireland. And guidance and counselling are critical to achieving these twin goals. ETBI believes there is an unanswerable case for increasing the entitlement of second-level schools to guidance and counselling resources to the levels they were at prior to the movement of the school's entitlement to ex-quota guidance counselling staff, and conducting a review of guidance counselling provision in schools with a view to putting in place an appropriate guidance counselling service in all schools. In this context of a review of the service, the potential for providing an out-of-hours service to students should be explored. The mental health of students can never be categorised as a 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. problem. In respect of adult guidance, the moratorium on public service appointments has resulted in a number of adult guidance services being left without an information officer and others without a guidance officer. Yet we know there are no real costs to the states. We know that there are real costs to the states and to learners when people enrol in unsuitable courses and then drop out, or complete courses that do not provide them with a progression route to either further education and training or work suited to their aptitudes. In this sense, the provision of information and guidance needs to be seen as a frontline service, and ETBI asks you, Minister, that resources be made available urgently to facilitate and to provide for the filling of all vacant information and guidance posts in the 39 adult education guidance services around the country, and a review of all adult guidance services, including those provided by the DSP, and the preparation and implementation of a national adult career guidance and information strategy. Minister, on July the 14th last, in announcing the agreement that had been concluded with the leadership of the second-level teacher unions on aspects of the junior cycle reform, you committed to, and I quote, engaging with the management bodies for schools and with the representatives of school leaders immediately to ensure that as implementation rolls out and by September 2017, school management would have the supports necessary to coordinate the junior cycle at whole school level and to promote the development of new approaches to learning and teaching and to embed classroom-based assessment successfully. While ETBI very much welcomes this comment. We feel it necessary to highlight the importance of that commitment being delivered on in a very practical manner. The implementation of the junior cycle framework will entail a considerable amount of extra administration, management and leadership, and this work cannot be just left to principals and deputy principals. It must be resourced by the establishment of new posts in schools. The school management bodies have already set out to your department what is required, so I will not repeat it here. However, I want to make an additional point. The commitment of July the 14th seems to imply that school managements will only be provided with this necessary support to coordinate the junior cycle at whole school level and to promote the development of new approaches to learning and teaching and to classroom-based assessment successfully from 2017. I know, Minister, that many school leaders are alarmed that they will be left to carry the junior cycle can between now and 2017, by which time a lot of planning and capacity building will need to have been undertaken in relation to the full implementing of the framework. If school leaders have to wait for their supports until 2017, there is every possibility that inappropriate practices will have developed as schools inevitably take shortcuts in doing what they are insufficiently resourced to do properly. And when I say that, I don't mean that schools would intentionally do that. It is clearly imperative that adequate resourcing for implementing this crucial reform is made available from the beginning of the next school year. In regard to the result of today's junior cycle ballots by ASTI and TUI, I wish to express my huge disappointment and the disappointment of ETBI at the rejection of the revised junior cycle proposals by ASTI. Having said that, ETBI warmly welcomes the positive ballot outcome by TUI. There are a number of stakeholders involved, including the Minister's own department, the second-level school management bodies, and the teacher unions. With the exception of ASTI, all have wholeheartedly accepted the revised proposals as a just and balanced solution. And I have to say to you, Minister, I think that your input in that should be saluted. In a recent press interview, you stated your intention to reduce the pupil-teacher ratio in primary schools when you declared, and I quote, "It certainly is a priority for me to reduce class size. The pupil-teacher ratio has increased at both second level and PLC level as a consequence of the economic downturn and has also inevitably had a negative impact on learner outcomes. Larger class sizes have a disproportionately negative impact on weaker and disadvantaged students. And I can say that in our sector, it's part of our mission to cater for these. From an equity perspective, this issue must be addressed without delay. At a time when the CSO has confirmed that Ireland's economy, with a GDP growth rate of 5.2%, and today, listening to Danny McCoy, the CEO of IBEC, I think he would raise that upwardly to at least 7%, and maybe in real monetary terms to 12%. And growing the government's coffers are filling with tax revenues again. We must not delay the restoration of the pupil-teacher ratio in both second-level schools and PLCs to their pre-cut rates. We are seeking a commitment and time frame today from you, Minister, to follow through on your stated intention. Minister, a lot has been achieved in the reform programme for further education and training. ETBI has wholeheartedly welcomed the proposed development of 25 new apprenticeships, with further to come down the line. The Apprenticeship Council has moved at an impressive rate to respond to your government's commitment to reform the entire apprenticeship system in Ireland. ETBs will be engaged in this process and will collaborate with industry to develop the necessary programmes for both apprenticeships and traineeships. And again, the CEO of IBEC confirmed his support for that today. The Transfer of the former FOSS training centres from SOLAS to ETBs brought coherence to education and training across the state. Further education and training now encompasses community education, vocational training opportunities, post-leaving certificate courses, apprenticeship and traineeships. The footprint of ETBs in the local community is significantly enhanced by the virtue of the broad scope of education and training provision, and this in addition to the first and second level schools. The training centres and their staff play an essential role on and off the job training, which is so vital for the needs of industry. The embargo on recruitment and replacement of staff in training centres since 2008, unique within the further education and training provision, is causing inequity when compared to schools. Effectively, the progression paths of learners are hindered, if not halted, as a consequence of this situation. Prolongation of this policy will have a negative impact on the recovering labour market. Apprenticeship registrations nationally are projected to increase 95% from 2013 to 2017. The number of senior training advisors over the same period is projected to decrease by 40%. These advisors manage a portfolio of employers who register apprenticeships, of which there are currently in excess of 10,000. These STAs are the linchpin with employers, and with proposals to double the number of apprenticeships, they are an essential missing cog in the wheel. Such significant reductions in the number of STAs will harm the future and reputation of the service. It is also imperative that all agencies involved in the management of apprenticeships work collaboratively through shared information systems. Enhancements to the ongoing rollout of the SOLAS, DSP and DES ETBI IT systems and access to the systems need urgent review to ensure that the best outcomes for training centres and their learners. We ask you, Minister, to address these lacunae so that we'll have the capacity and expertise to engage with employers so as to build, manage and maintain an on-the-job training of apprentices. ETB has long called for the mainstreaming of further education and training as a distinct pillar of the education sector, standing shoulder to shoulder with first, second and third level educations. FET is at the core of the regeneration of European economies, and in Ireland too, it is one of the pillars of economic growth. Skills development is seen as key to economic development and competitiveness in a global marketplace, and the availability of an appropriate skilled workforce influences the location of new investment. Skills development is therefore a catalyst for economic development, contributing to a culture of innovation and enterprise. This sector has a long tradition of innovation and enterprise. In this regard, ETBI is currently working with 5 European partners in an international Edison project to develop an entrepreneurial learning pathway for use in schools and colleges. The development of a Train the Trainers program is at the core of the project, and the aim is to promote an entrepreneurial culture in schools among staff and students. The European communique, New Skills for New Jobs, states that one of the areas where teacher training should focus on is on entrepreneurship. Therefore, ETBI's involvement in the EU funding transfer of Innovation Partnership is most timely, as it aims to transfer successful strategies and experiences in teaching entrepreneurship from best international practice to the ETB sector. This sector is set to take the lead in the development and implementation of entrepreneurial teaching in our schools and colleges, and this carries a proud tradition of innovation in teaching and learning, which has always been at the hallmark of our sector. If we are to meaningfully establish the FET sector as a sector truly comparable with other sectors, then we must ensure that all tutors engaged right across the sector have recognisable qualifications and career paths. For too long, the sector has not been recognised as having comparable status to other sectors, and we need to ask ourselves, why is this the case? For over a decade now, we have argued that to recognise the sector as a professional sector, delivering quality education and training programs, all trainers and tutors must be adequately and suitably qualified. If we are sincere and determined about investing in this sector, we need to invest first and foremost in trainers and tutors right across the broad spectrum of further education, community education and training. ETBI therefore welcomes the Curran Sullis survey of the skills profile of the sector, which is comprehended in the Sullis-Fed strategy. This survey is essential to the development of a CPD strategy for Fed staff, and it's a first step in the process which must now inevitably and promptly result in a comprehensive strategy which responds to the needs of that sector. When the strategy is determined, ETBI wants you, Minister, to fund the CPD strategy with a resource package that shows resolution and determination to ensure that the FET students are tutored and supported by appropriately trained staff right across the entire spectrum of the provision. This is the pillar upon which the desired world-class FET system will be built. In his report to Congress yesterday, the General Secretary highlighted the slow progress regarding the rollout of the Community National School Model. The Community National School Model has now been operated on a pilot basis for 7 years. I will not argue the case here, but I do want to say, Minister, that ETBI believes that the Community National School Model has much to offer primary education in 21st century Ireland, as it accommodates all young people in a community being educated together, irrespective of their families' belief systems. We are disappointed, and indeed so are others, about the slow progress in the development of this fine model of multi-faith primary school. Since 2008, only 11 schools have been established, and there remains a lack of clarity about governance and patronage, which now needs to be urgently addressed. ETBI is seeking that ETBs now be formally installed as patrons of Community National Schools, and that the Community National School model be mainstreamed and extended to all ETBs. I hope that you will set this as a priority in 2015 and 2016, and our General Secretary has contributed to that debate in an article on yesterday's paper. Today, Minister, we had a presentation from Mairead Niahata, Príomh-Éide Coláiste Ní Bhón in Ishmaan, Adam. She gave us an insight into the unique challenges our 5 island schools face in trying to provide and sustain an education for their students. The concerns and needs of island schools set out by Ms. Niahata are very real. Island schools are a very distinctive group of schools, worthy of our support, because they are also the lifeblood of their communities. I'm suggesting to you, Minister, that you might set up a small select expert group to look at all the issues raised by Ms. Niahata. And her presentation was very fair, and she presented it with a degree of emotion that actually moved the delegates at this conference. I would ask you, Minister, at the end of proceedings today, that you might receive or accept a copy of her presentation. It is important to note that our conference is meeting this year during National Adult Literacy Awareness Week, with its theme, Learning and Life Chances, promoting equality through basic education and lifelong learning. ETBI Adult Literacy Service, in partnership with NALA, are highlighting the range of tuition options available in local communities all over Ireland, with the aim of encouraging greater participation. These learning opportunities not only offer adults the potential to master key skills and gain a qualification, but they also enhance people's capacity to get a job, or to progress in their careers, or to support their children's learning and manage their health and well-being. And I shared last night with the delegates at dinner how, listening yesterday to the early morning news, how Nala arrived at the ploughing championships in their camper vans. And I suggested maybe next year myself and the General Secretary might go to the ploughing championship in a camper van to promote the ETBI. But before I conclude, I would like to refer to two happenings that had an impact on me and from which all of us could learn valuable lessons. On the 10th of June this year, I was travelling from Athenry to the Outdoor Education Centre in Petersburg in North Connemara, a beautiful part of the country. Actually, I was tailing my chief executive, David Leahy, and I was really impressed by his driving. While listening to the news of one, I heard an extract of a homily preached earlier that morning by Father Benny Lee at the funeral mass of Ronan Hughes, a lovely young boy who had died by suicide. Ronan was from Clonaux in County Tyrone. Father Lee said in his homily, and I quote, Ronan did not take his own life, but his life was taken from him, and somewhere in the world, maybe far away from Clonaux, is a man, a woman, or a gang who are guilty of this heinous crime. I think Father Lee's words should resonate with all of us. Those who bully, intimidate, or harass others, whether online or offline, should be aware of the potential consequences of their actions. And I plead with young people in ETB schools and centres and in all school settings to be, and this is a four-letter word, but I think it's a magic word, to be nice to each other. And if that could happen, we would change the life experiences of thousands of young people. In June also, we had the tragedy in Berkeley in California in the USA, in which 6 beautiful people died and 7 were seriously injured. One of those injured was Clodagh Cogley. A week after the accident, Clodagh posted the following on her Facebook page, and I quote, "Hey friends, just an update to let you know, guys, how I'm getting on. The fall from the balcony left me with 2 collapsed lungs, a broken shoulder, a broken knee, 5 broken ribs, and a broken spinal cord, meaning the chances of me using my legs again are pretty bleak. Who knows, maybe legs have been holding me back all these years, and I'll realize my talent for wheelchair basketball. This thing I'm taking from this tragedy is that life is short, and I intend to honor those who died by living the happiest and most fulfilling life possible. Enjoy a good dance and the feeling of grass beneath your feet, like it's the last time, because in this crazy world, you will never know when it might be." Her message I found to be quite inspirational. And surely when we wake up tomorrow morning, we too can commit to living the happiest and most fulfilling life possible. In this way, we will not only lead and transform education and training, but we'll transform living as well. And to support their recovery to full health, we might give them a round of applause, all these injured people. And maybe someday, Clodagh might address this conference. Finally, I would like to acknowledge on your behalf, delegates, the hard and diligent work undertaken by the staff of the ETBI Secretariat throughout the year, under the firm leadership of General Secretary Michael Moriarty. And if I had time, Minister, I'd love to name them by name, but time doesn't allow me. But I can assure you, they give an outstanding service to the ETBs they represent. Minister, I want to thank you for giving... Minister, I want to thank you for giving your attention to this admittedly long list of appeals. You know they're all made with nothing but the good of the students, clients, staff, learners of our member ETBs in mind. But let me return to junior cycle reform. Comprehended in junior cycle assessment is CBAs, classroom-based assessment. And shortly, Minister, you too will face a CBA, but it won't be a classroom-based assessment. It'll be a constituency-based assessment. And I know, Minister, when that happens, you will have your work well done. You will have your homework well done. And when you get your results of that assessment, it will say, passed with distinction. I wish you well in that when it does happen, Minister. Be assured also, Minister, that ETBI will continue to work collaboratively with your department and cooperate with a range of initiatives in terms of rollout of services to ETBs and other entities. As a final point, I want to highlight the fact that ETBs are very much at the heart of the communities they serve, with untold potential to support the state in terms of education and training provision at first, second and third and fifth provision level. They have the capacity to greatly improve individual empowerment, social inclusion and economic prosperity in their communities, provided they are appropriately and adequately resourced, Minister. We look forward for this to happen. I have no doubt but that after some very difficult years, ETBs are reaching the mountaintop, and with the necessary supports, to quote the classic Frank Sinatra song, "The best is yet to come." Minister, delegates and guests, I want to thank you for listening.